Cybersecurity in Action. Using resilience data during crises. Luke Fletcher, Senior Crisis Consultant at Bureau Veritas, presents at CL Digital.
My name's Luke. I'm a Senior Crisis Consultant with Bureau Veritas, and very shortly, Bureau Veritas, for those who don't know, are a global testing and inspection services organisation. We have around 80,000 employees dotted around the globe. As Paul said, I work for our Cybersecurity division, and I moved out to the Netherlands in September last year to lead the international expansion of our crisis and resilience service offering. What does that mean? That means I help clients develop crisis frameworks, deliver training, write plans, and facilitate largely the delivery of cyber crisis simulations. My talk today is on the critical role of resilience data in crisis response. In my position at Direct Line Group, we worked very closely with our business continuity and resilience colleagues, trying to take advantage of all the hard data and resilience information that have been put into tooling like CL Digital and try and use it to inform our crisis response capabilities and our decision-making processes. In terms of an agenda, I'm going to go through a little bit of background on an incident that took place last year called the MOVEit incident. It was a cyber incident. I'll go into a little bit more detail. I'll talk about the ransomware ecosystem just to give a little bit of context. I'll dive into resilience data and how it can be effectively utilized in a crisis using that MOVEit case study. And then I'll go on to some key takeaways, just some things for you to think about after this presentation. So, the MOVEit incident itself. Can I just get a show of hands as to who's heard of the MOVEit incident before this session? Okay, most of the room. Okay, that's pretty good. So yeah, no, it's not about King Julian. It is indeed about the 27th of May last year, the major data breach from the MOVEit safe file transfer platform. You may have seen some of the articles in the news. Lots of money made by a gang called CLOP. Cybercriminal gang performed an attack. They found a critical vulnerability in a safe file transfer platform called MOVEit, and they were able to steal data from somewhere near 3,000 victim organizations, around 100 million global records, and that's just what we know about. There's obviously a lot more that we don't. I'll go into a lot more detail on this in a second, but just to add some context, I'm going to give you a 2-minute demonstration on the ransomware ecosystem. Some of you may be more familiar with this than others, but in the ecosystem, you have roughly 4 key players. So you have the victim organizations, which could be yourselves, but hopefully not. You have what's called initial access brokers, you have ransomware affiliates, and then you have ransomware operators or developers of malware. And if I start with the initial access brokers, these tend to be individuals or perhaps small groups who manage to get access to a victim organization. Now, usually, as you've probably all seen before, they tend to be through phishing emails. So let's say you click on the link, you put in your credentials, that initial access broker then has access into your environment. But it might just be a fairly standard employee access, and there's not a lot they can do with that. So what they do is they go onto the dark web and they sell that access. And for a simple kind of normal employee, they might sell it for something like $100. And another initial access broker, perhaps with a bit more sophistication, interest in the sector and resources, will see that and think, I could do something with that access. So they buy it for $100. They then spend a lot of time trying to escalate their privileges and turn that from somebody who maybe is in the HR department, for example, and get IT admin access so they can have access to much more of the organization's infrastructure. They then know that that admin access is worth a lot more money. So they'll resell that on the dark web for this time something like $10,000. And you'll have a ransomware affiliate, which is an active group that is looking for their next victim to perform an attack. So they're scouring the dark web and they're trying to find these IT credentials. They'll go on and they'll buy that access thinking, we have expertise in the sector, we've got the resources to perform their attack, they are a rich organization and we could probably make some money from them. However, they need malware to be able to perform this attack. So they reach out to an organization like Lockbit, who probably many of you have heard of, and they use their malware to perform the attack on the victim company. But the victim company will speak with the operator or the developer. If they'll negotiate with them. If they choose to pay, they'll pay the operator. The operator will give a decryption key if that's the decision that they take, and they'll pay the ransomware affiliate something like 70% of the money for doing all the hard work. very quick snapshot into the background of the ransomware ecosystem. So, this is a snapshot of taken live from the dark web, so this is a real case, where an initial access broker has managed to get admin access to a solicitor firm called In the Matrix, and they've put it up online and they've said, we're going to auction this starting at $3,000, or you can buy it for a blitz price at $5,000. However, after 5 months, they've not been able to sell that access. Nobody's interested in it. So they do a 30% discount, $4,000, you can buy it right now, okay? Now the interesting thing, it means that that initial access broker has had access to the organization's environment for 5 months. So when you talk about recovery of backups and recovering systems, these are the kind of things that they need to take into account. So, 2 other bits of background. I'll talk about the MOVEit platform itself, and then the cybercriminal gang responsible for the attack. MOVEit is, and this is taken directly from the MOVEit website, it is a leading, secure, managed file transfer system used by thousands of organizations around the world. So lots and lots of organizations, government agencies, major corporates. And on their website provides a more secure environment for your most sensitive files. So a gold mine to a cybercriminal gang. And it is used to transfer data back and forth between organizations. On the right then you have CLOP. Anybody speak Russian? No, so CLOP actually means bedbug in Russian. There you go. They've been active since about 2019. They're one of the largest phishing distributors in the world. Pretty sophisticated. They used to perform what's called double extortion tactics. So very simply that means they not only stole data and ransomed companies for the data, or to not publish the data, sorry. They also encrypted files on the network, meaning that you couldn't use them. But for important context, they changed their tactics and decided it was too much effort to actually encrypt the systems, and they would just make enough money by saying, if you don't give us money, we're going to publish your data on the dark web. So, a little bit of background on those 2. The incident itself. So, you have the threat actor manages to take advantage of a critical vulnerability in the MOVEit file transfer system. Now, this was classed as what's known as a 0-day vulnerability, which means it was in the platform from the day that it was created. So every organization that has this platform is susceptible to this vulnerability. Now that's a problem because the MOVEit platform itself can be embedded on-premise in organizational infrastructure, also in versions in the cloud. Now, one of the companies that was named quite a lot in the press at the time was Zealous. Zealous is a payroll provider, and they manage the payroll for a lot of major organizations, which, as you can imagine, gets a lot of employees concerned if they're impacted by an event like this. What the threat actor did was not just take advantage of the vulnerability, but they managed to open up a backdoor into the platform so they could just maintain access and keep coming in back and forth. Now, they knew that if they started to do anything, that they would make a lot of noise. And their key goal was to try and steal data from this, knowing how sensitive it is. Now, there were records going back to July 2021 of them trying to write scripts to automate the exfiltration of data from these platforms. So that's nearly 2 years before they actually performed the attack that everyone's aware of. So they suspect that they were in these platforms, they were testing the access out, they've written some kind of script, they've had 2 years in these platforms to try and figure out what they're going to do, and then en masse, they've just started taking all this data out from hundreds of organizations and basically piling it into a giant treasure chest, if you like. Now, this got a lot of people concerned because if they've been in there for 2 years, what have they been doing in that time, right? The other problem, and the reason it was so big, is you not only had companies like Zealous using it to move files, but you had their clients who were also transferring data to them. So the threat actor itself were able to target those end customers to say, we have your data, give us money, or we're going to release it on the dark web. So very quick background into the MOVEit story itself. Now, the main point of the presentation, how can we utilize data that you have in your business continuity and operational resilience platforms to help in crises like these? So, many of you, if there's anyone from financial services, are no doubt mapped all of your important business services and frantically trying to do testing before you get to the March deadline next year, right? You will probably, I assume at this point, have mapped many of your critical resources. Let's say, for example, take supply chain, you've probably got a list of critical suppliers. Those not in financial services probably have something similar from a business continuity management perspective, right? Hopefully, your supply chain team or yourselves through whatever platform you might use have lots of information on your suppliers, what contracts and services are in place, who are your key contacts internally and at the client, what kind of resilience level do you have? I'm sure some in the financial services sector have, do you have contingency plans in place for the supplier? What are their resilience arrangements like? What's their cyber resilience capability? Some of this, what data integrations do you have? And what data do you actually send back and forth? Now, this might be scattered everywhere, or if you're lucky, it's all in one place. Now, why am I going through those two bits? Because all that information can be used very effectively in a crisis like this for three key things. 1, early warning. 2, impact assessment. And 3, for escalation. And I'll explain these in the context of the MOVEit incident. So, early warning. Let's say you're a fairly large organization and you have 7 suppliers that you want to know something about, whether they're critical or whether they're just your full supplier list. Sure, some have thousands, some have much smaller, but let's say there are 487 suppliers that you want to know about. There are intelligence alerting platforms out there that you can utilize to input your supplier information into. I'm sure some in the room probably do this already. Now, if you have these set up correctly, in an incident like the one we've just talked about, if it appears on the screen, the threat actor, and many will do this in the ransomware ecosystem, is they will have a blog site and they will publish on the blog all the victims that they have that they're trying to convince to pay ransoms. And if you don't immediately pay, they'll tell the world that they've hacked into your company and that they're about to release your data if you don't pay. Now, this is a real take from the MOVEit incident. You can see the kind of wording that they use is always quite entertaining. And you can see the list up here that they just start putting up online. And if you don't pay, they then just publish your data available for everybody to see. Now, if you've got the alerts set up in place and you've mapped all your suppliers and you've input in this into the system, you can get quick alerts as soon as a blog like this appears, and that means you can do something about it, right? You can actually act on it and take decisions and proactively try to protect yourself. The second, I'll try not to click this too much in case it scoots past. There you go, impact assessment. Let's say one of your suppliers appears on that list. You get an alert about it. You then want to find out as much information as you can about what that supplier means to you. What processes do they support? Again, if you're in the financial services sector, what important business services do they support? And if you have a tool like the CL Digital platform or other platforms, you can obviously map it out like this in a very quick, succinct fashion. You then also want to know as much as you can on that data we just talked about the supplier itself. So I want to quickly know, what does it mean to me? And tell me everything about the supplier. What services do we have in place? Are we technically connected to them? Do they have logins into our environment? What kind of level of resilience do they have? Are they got high levels of cyber resilience or whatever it is it might be? And then you can then determine at what level you want to escalate this to and what key decisions you need to make. So, I must have put a lot of animations in this. I think I must have added random animations in here, so that's probably why, yeah. Okay, so let's say you've done the first bit, you've put all your suppliers in. You get alerted to those suppliers, you find out the information you can, and you identify that through this incident, 12 suppliers have been impacted. Now, that was the case for many organizations. There's over like 3,000 impacted, so as you can imagine, some major corporations had a number of suppliers impacted. You want to be able to very quickly determine how concerned should I be about this. And so what you can do, and I know organizations did, is set up dedicated task forces or response teams to go look into those suppliers, find out all the information we can, and let's determine what we need to do about them. Let's say 9 of them, you assess them as low concern. You don't send a lot of sensitive data, you don't have any technical integrations, they don't support many critical processes, you're not so worried about it. Let's say 3 of them, you're very concerned about. You send lots of sensitive data to that supplier on a regular basis. They are very technically integrated. They have logins to your platforms. All of these kind of things. You need to do something about it. And then you can determine on the back of that, what are you going to do about these 3 suppliers? And so you could, for example, for supplier A, you determine the risk of doing anything or stopping activity with that supplier is too great for the impact it will have on your customers. So you're going to leave the supplier as it is, but maybe monitor and investigate and liaise with them. For the other two suppliers, staying connected to them based on the information that you have is too risky. And so you need to immediately activate your contingency plans. You need to start looking at alternative options or take whatever actions and decisions you might have in your business continuity plans. That is a kind of high-level overview of the kind of three core components that we've seen with clients and previous experience on how these things can be utilized in a crisis like this. So just to end on some key takeaways. Firstly, I think it's safe to say many of you are probably concerned about supply chain issues. They're definitely going to continue to cause us some major crises. Resilience data can definitely be utilized effectively in a crisis situation if we have it mapped out in the right way. Tooling can definitely make your life easier, and our recommendation is definitely to run these things through exercises, as until you kind of practice it, you don't really know if it's going to help you that much. And then just to end, you may have seen this the other day, and I think there's ongoing at the minute, the Ticketmaster data breach. It looks like it was a compromise by one of their third-party suppliers. So I think the MOVEit crisis is just one of many to come.
Want to know more about our crisis and resilience services? Contact us today at secura.com/crisis.